Where do you even get this shit? I'm glad I asked. Maybe you haven't noticed, but the United States is very, very big. Americans like us consider a 10-hour drive just a quick little trip, but spending any more than 5 seconds looking for a trash can is an absolute deal breaker. In this massive expanse of a country, we've got every biome you can think of. We have warm states, cold states, wet states, a moldy basement, and dry states. A lot of dry states. Millions upon millions of people live in the driest parts of America. In fact, the fastest growing cities over the last few years have been in Arizona and Texas. More and more people with little to no water nearby. So what do? I mean, why do so many people keep flocking to the desert with no natural water source? I mean, if it was me, I drink water. I need it. I don't want to go to a place where it isn't. That's what river storage is for, baby. You got a small river, dam it up. Now you got a reservoir. Fuck everyone downstream. You got to it first. I'm actually not kidding. That's how we keep so many people and farms hydrated out there. We've turned one of the biggest deserts on the planet into a lush landscape of farms, cities, and livestock by blocking rivers. The Colorado River Storage Project started almost 75 years ago, and since then, it has completely changed this entire section of the country. Thousands of square miles now habitable because of us. I wish it were that simple. Water in the America Southwest is as valuable as cash, and that metaphor is only going to get more and more real. Some of the projects to conserve water out there have been insanely silly. We're going to talk about a few of them, how incredibly weird they are, and how they might work in the future, given the benefits and the damage they've caused in the last century. For millions of years, the final few miles of the Colorado River flowed through a lush forest teeming with a vibrant ecosystem. But in the last 100 years, it's transformed into a barren expanse of salty mudflats, too toxic for anything more than a few organisms who are too stubborn to leave, like my ex-wife, and as you would know, your mom. Damming up a river to build a metropolis in the desert is a classic American pastime, even more than baseball. Because why shouldn't we grow corn for our cows, for our steaks, in Death Valley? The Colorado River alone has over 100 dams to keep water as far north as possible for as long as possible, so people and farmers can use it as much as they need to. Now, don't crucify me like I'm Jesus H. Christ. These things are incredible feats of engineering that produce a massive amount of mostly clean energy. I mean, you can imagine living in the 1930s. You've probably never seen anything taller than a tree before. Everyone's broke from the Depression, and the federal government builds a 60-story monolith in the middle of the desert, producing more electricity than anything on Earth. Socialism run rampant. I know. Dams aren't all that bad, but as we take more and more control over how water naturally flows, we're restricting it from feeding the people and ecosystems downstream. The Colorado River Delta, where it meets the sea in Mexico, is almost always bone dry these days. If the Colorado River suddenly stopped flowing, you'd have 4 years of carryover capacity in reservoirs before you had to evacuate most of Southern California, Arizona, and a good portion of Colorado, New Mexico, Utah, and Wyoming. And that's not just some nightmare. Droughts are getting worse. And someday that could actually happen. I mean, right now we're seeing Lake Mead, blocked by the Hoover Dam, lose almost 70% of its capacity. They're literally finding human skeletons with cement shoes now that the water level has dropped so much. I guess all that Vegas gambling debt sleeps with the fishes too.
You've made your last L-take, kid.
What happens if Lake Mead runs out? Millions of people and farms will have to live without water until it rains. In the desert. But there's one quirked up state with the most interesting relation with water. What if half of your state is bone dry and the other half is a luscious forest? You and I might think, well, I'm just going to settle in the foresty part. But Californians aren't sober enough to think straight like that. Did you know that Southern California used to have the largest freshwater lake west of the Mississippi? Keyword, used to. Tulare Lake supported Native Americans and all sorts of wildlife in the area for centuries. But by the late 1800s, it was completely dried up. This is the first picture on the Wikipedia page. Look at that absolutely massive lake behind these boys on a camping trip. And this is what it looks like now. The water from Tulare Lake was diverted for people and agriculture all around Southern California. It was dry for almost 100 years. But now that weather is getting more and more unpredictable, floods have reclaimed the lake a few times, but the people refuse to give up control. See, back in the 19th century, water in most places was privately bought and sold, like how electricity and the internet works for most people today. But then comes a man from the California Water Company named William Mulholland. This guy with a sick stash. Mulholland saw his friend conveniently elected as the mayor of a small, unassuming bullshit town named Los Angeles at the turn of the century. With the two of them working together, the private LA Water Company was converted to city control. Marxists strike again. LA rapidly expanded as Mulholland and his team brought water to the driest part of California. From 1890 to 1910, the population of LA grew from 50 to more than 300,000 people because of this water distribution. But still, most of the fresh water in California sits north in the Sierra Nevada mountains. But Los Angeles is south by the ocean. Have we reached the peak of LA expansion? How will we house so many billionaires and movie execs in the future if we don't have enough water to fill their swimming pools? All good questions. And Mulholland had an answer. What if we take water from the snowy mountains and ship it over into Los Angeles? His grand plan was to build a massive aqueduct connecting the lakes and the mountains to the reservoirs around LA. They proposed this 500-mile man-made river carrying fresh water to the middle of the desert. Now, diverting the water from an area the size of Ohio down to a single city by the ocean was obviously not very popular. The two men also confused the residents of Owens Valley, where the water was to begin with, by saying they would only divert a few unused streams down south. Of course, they were planning on using every drop. They just kind of forgot to mention that to the residents there. And so they drained Owens Valley of most of their water. LA was thriving at the expense of natives and ranchers in the area up north. They dried up Owens Lake and left behind a dust bowl of heavy metals and pollution from the lake bed. With no water to keep that place, the wind carried all that pollution around the southwest. It got so bad that in 1924, residents in Owens Valley bombed the aqueduct trying to save their own land. Of course, LA just called them terrorists and hired more armed thugs. This whole conflict was a national story, leading to a movie called Chinatown with Jack Nicholson, which is a good movie, but funny because it's made by Roman Polanski and a bunch of other people who live in LA. Imagine, if you will, a megacity in the middle of the desert, only surviving by draining distant water sources, especially with weather getting more unpredictable and wildfires getting even more common. LA and cities like it are going to need some serious rethinking in the next few decades. But what does the future look like? They could desalinate the ocean water, but that takes an insane amount of energy and you still have to get rid of that salt somewhere. They can reuse their water, but convincing citizens to drink their own piss doesn't go down well, even if it's clean. Unless you're me. I love drinking my own piss. In places like Saudi Arabia, about half the water comes from the ocean, and the other half comes from groundwater, which isn't gonna last forever. Although the end of the Colorado River is mostly dry these days, after some floods in the 80s and 90s, fresh river water flowed down there for the first time in decades. Amazingly, wildlife started returning. Wetlands and a young forest grew for a short time, but it returned to a desert when the water stopped. But this is good news. It shows that if the water flows again, nature can rebound. It's not a lost cause. Either way, I'm still glad I live in beautiful Ohio. It's like California, but it's always gray, wet, and full of tornadoes. At least, we still have this. Oh my God, it looks like I pissed myself. Oh my God. Turn it off.